The following is a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club.
Welcome everybody, this is round 3 of the 2022 Spring Chess Classic. I am Grandmaster Alejandro Ramirez here with my good friend, Grandmaster Cristian Chirila, to bring you all the action of the day.
Alejandro, always a pleasure to be here doing commentary in this beautiful studio.
Absolutely, and we have a great tournament for you. It is, of course, not the Sinkfield Cup, it's not the US Champ, but it is a couple of amazing round robin stepping stones for collegiate and young players to go right into the elite, and we have a star-studded field. We have, how many world championships do we have in this tournament?
I didn't count them, Alejandro.
We have
you
so
caught
many.
me by surprise, but we have a lot of them. I know one
of
of your students is a world champion, Darius Vierge,
Yeah.
who is 2670, one of the highest rated players in the event.
And one of your students is a world champion in Mishra
That
and
is true, Alejandro. You see, you caught me by surprise. Yes, we have at least 2 junior world champions.
And Jeffery is as well, imagine.
Wow.
Let's take a look at the standings right now in Group A as we are talking about this star-studded field. Speaking of him, Jeffery Xiong is currently the leader of Group A after winning his first 2 games, defeating his compatriot Darius Vierge in their matchup yesterday. Ray Robson and Aram Hakobyan also won their games yesterday, reaching 1.5 points. Meanwhile, Sam Sevian, Ilya Nizhnik, and Hans Niemann all have 2 draws and are now on 50%.
And tied for the 7th position, we have Darius Vierge, who lost yesterday, Mikhail Antipov, Alex Lenderman, and Camille Dragoon.
Let's take a look at the standings of Group B, where we also have only one player with 2 points, and that is Chris Repka, starting the tournament quite strong. He is followed closely by Christopher Yu and Sam Khanin with 1.5 points each. Meanwhile, Robert Hungaski, Elsha Moyodebadi, JJ Alimarandi, and Titus Stramavicius all with 50%.
And tied for 8th place, we have Abhimanyu Mishra, the youngest grandmaster in the world at only 12 years and I believe 10 months. Arman Mikaelian also with 0.5 point, and in last place, Harshit Raja with no points.
Yes, and the tournament format for this event, we have 2 10-player round robins. The time control is of 90 minutes for 40 moves with a 30-second increment from move 1, and of course you get those extra 30 minutes on move 40.
Also, players are not allowed to mutually agree to a draw in less than 40 moves. They can repeat the position, they can give perpetual checks, but they cannot mutually agree to a draw. This is going to guarantee a very combative tournament. And let's look at the schedule, Alejandro.
9 rounds of chess played in consecutive days, no rest here at all. Every single round starts at 1 p.m. except for Thursday, March 10th. That is to give enough time for playoffs if necessary. If players are tied for first place, they will be playing it off over the board for the top prize.
The round starts at 1 p.m., but we start the commentary at 3:30 p.m. Central Time every single day, except the last one, when we will be starting at 1:30 p.m.
Yes, and join us here in the conversation on social media. We have hashtag Spring Chess Classic. You can follow us at US Chess Champs. And if you are following us right now on Twitch, for every $75 that we raise, that will be on subs, bits, donations, or any other method, we will be able to give one child chess programming for the entire semester. That's going to sponsor one child to be able to get chess education here at the St. Louis Chess Club. Certainly a worthy cause.
You are potentially helping build the foundation of a future world champion.
That's right. So please join us in that endeavor as we take a look at the pairings for Group A. We have Hans Niemann playing against Sam Sevian. Alex Lenderman is going to be playing against Ilya Nizhnik. Those two were teammates over at Webster University. Meanwhile, Camille Dragoon, who currently plays for University of Texas at Rio Grande Valley, will be playing against Webster alum Ray Robson. Misha Antipov, here in the Battle of Collegiate Chess, representing University of Missouri, will be playing against Darius Vierge, playing for St. Louis University. And the current leader, Jeffery Xiong, is certainly going to be having the matchup of the day against Aram Hakobyan, who currently attends Webster University, one of the rising talents here in St. Louis. You can see him there sporting that Webster Gorlock blue. He's had a very good year in the past year, really increasing his level. Aram is a much improved player from when he came here for a classic a few years ago. He actually played this in the B group, and he has upgraded not only to the A group, but currently half a point behind the leader. Let's take a look at the B group as we have the matchups of Aram Mikhailian against Christopher Yu. Elsha Maria Diabadi in will be playing against Robert Hongaski. Titus Ramavicius will be playing against JJ Ali Marandi, another collegiate battle in that one. Abhimanyu Mishra, the youngest Grandmaster in history, is going to be playing against Harshit Raja. And Chris Repka, with 2 points out of 2, will try to continue his strong showing here in the Spring Classic 2022 against Khanin, who started also with a good 1.5 point start. But certainly Chris, with a perfect score so far and with the white pieces, is going to try to increase that amount of points. Cristian, what can you tell us about the game of your student?
Well, speaking about that very key matchup in the B group between Chris Repka and Khanin, we have a very, very intriguing opening leading to a super complicated position. Let's go get through the game. Knight to F3, D5. Chris Repka starts with this ready setup. He's going to go G3, Bishop G2, Castle, and try to play like this position, this bishop, this fianchetto bishop on the long diagonal. Very important piece for white. Bishop to G7, and we've seen this quite a few times in this tournament already. White generally plays the move D4 and stops black from taking full control of the center with the move E5. That's why black usually doesn't go knight to F6 but starts with G6 and bishop to G7, so that this diagonal is open and I will be able to build up and threaten this move E5. Well, Chris Repka says, I don't care about your E5. Take the center. I'm going to just simply castle, put my king to safety, and I'm going to allow you to take full control of the center. Now, white has to figure out how to attack these two pawns, either the pawn on E5 with the move D4, either the pawn on D5 with the move C4 or E4. Of course, neither of those right now works, so you have to prepare those with the move D3. Knight to E7, C4, immediately tackling this pawn on D5, potentially threatening the transition into some sort of a Sicilian, almost a reversed dragon Sicilian with this pawn on G6 and the bishop on G7. D takes C4, D takes C4. Now, if black decides to exchange the queens, white is going to have a very comfortable advantage in the endgame. For example, if you do this, I will simply take, and after castle, I'm simply going to develop my knight to C3. And now you have a very difficult choice to make, because I have a big threat, and that is potentially to go knight to B5. So for example, if you continue developing naturally, I'm just simply going to go knight to B5, and now you have huge problems defending the pawn on C7. This position is already quite difficult, and if you try to play the move C6 and say, okay, this C6 is a very good move because it stops the bishop's action on the long diagonal, at the same time it controls these very important key squares for the knight D5 and B5. But right now you're allowing me to get to D6, so I'm going to transition that knight to D6, which is going to lead to a very, very pleasant position for white. Black decided not to exchange the queens after taking on C4. He decided to go castle, get ready to take on D8 in case white decides to exchange the queens with his rook. Knight to C6, knight to D5, and now we see once again a structural transition after this move. Knight to D4, bishop takes D4, E takes D4. It looks kind of odd from white's perspective because you gave away a very good bishop for a knight. Also, you're going to help elongate the action of the bishop on G7. H3, bishop to C8, rook to E1, C6, knight to F4, but you do have some problems with this pawn on D4. Also, you open the avenue for this pawn on the E file to potentially go down the board to E5 and then E6. Let's see what happened. Keep that in mind. Keep that idea in mind. A5, E5, c5, e6, immediately attacking the black king and potentially opening up the e file. Now this is already trouble for black. We have this position on the board right now, and it feels, to be honest, well, first of all, the computer is saying that white is completely crushing at this point. But also from a practical perspective, it just simply feels like black is suffocating at this point. I really like what Chris Repka is doing in this one. And with a victory, let's not forget, he will be moving on to 3 out of 3 points.
No, it's an incredible start for him. And it's not just the 3 out of 3. I felt that he's played really good chess. I felt that he's taken his chances and he's been relatively precise. Perhaps that moment against a Raja in their game 2 didn't feel it was 100%, but he really took that advantage from the beginning to the end. And I've been very impressed with his play here at the Spring Classic 2022. Let's go to the other key matchup of the day, as we do have the game of Jeffery, Xiong and Aram Hakobyan. Let me take you to what I think is the critical moment of the position. Here, after a lot of theory and some wild complications, we got to this position where Jeffery has a couple of key choices. Let me put you more or less on what's going on here. You see there's a lot of tension. Let's count the pieces first. Both sides have all of them, but some pawns are missing for black. White is currently up a pawn, but is faced with the threat of this bishop on f8. It just came from g7 to f8, targeting this rook on b4. So there are some complications here on the queen side. There's a lot of tension going on the left side of the board. And he had, at this point, Jeffery, 2 choices. You could take on b5. I think this is the simpler option. However, black has a couple of options that make white's conversion task very difficult. Even the move queen c8 is possible, but I think even bishop takes b5 kind of works tactically. The point being that rook takes b5, pawn takes d4. The knight on c3 is actually the only defender of this rook on b5, so it cannot move, and I'll take on c3 later, which means that I have this 4 versus 3. I might be down a pawn in some variations, but conversion is going to be very, very far from simple. That being said, I think that was a much better option than what happened here. Bishop f8, he took with the knight on b5 and went for these complications. Knight takes b5, bishop takes b4. You really have to take on a7. You need to get your exchange back. The move bishop takes b4 simply allows bishop takes b5, and there's no trickery. Knight takes a7, bishop takes d2, rook takes d2, queen takes a4, and d5. And perhaps Jeffery calculated all the way down to this position and thought, well, my position looks super nice. My knight on a7 is stranded, but because of my last move d5, I'm going to be able to put it on c6. I have a protected pass pawn on the d5 square. But a cold shower came in the game as Aram uncorked the move bishop takes d5, a desperado tactic. That means that you actually give up the bishop for a pawn before giving it up for free. Notice that you cannot take on a7, or at least not successfully, because I just capture the bishop back. And white is thrilled with this exchange. He remains with an extra pawn on d5 that's protected and passed. But after bishop takes d5, the structure actually collapses. And notice that this knight is still stranded. The best that he could do was play the move knight c8. It doesn't really matter if he takes on d5 or plays knight c8. We'll get to a very similar structure after the move queen a6, which is ultra precise. The idea is that knight d6 is not on tap anymore. This is a very, very good move. The queen is covering that square. And after knight e7 check, there's really nothing better. Rook takes, pawn takes, e4, d6, rook e6, queen d1. We have the current position in which material is even. You can count it out, but it feels so much more pleasant to be black.
And now we see that pawn coming, like in the game between Chris Repka and Khanin, all the way to e3.
Yeah, and it has to be captured. There's no real choice. It has happened. And you don't have to capture immediately. You could even consider something like queen b6. But the point is that when this pawn eventually disappears, this pawn's really not going anywhere. And this king on g1, it's a little bit weak on the dark squares. Notice that this is a light square bishop. Black has 2 knights. And in just by the way the chess works, that means your dark squares are relatively undefended. And this diagonal strikes me as a little bit of a problem eventually. I am not saying that black has a clear advantage or anything like that, but if I had to pick any side, it would certainly be black, and I think Jeffery is the one that has to be very precise to equalize this endgame.
And also, I think another critical point is that knight on h4, despite the fact that there's no more pawn on e4 restricting his movement back to f3, you can still not put the knight on f3, because that's going to allow me, my knight, to jump to e4. And that might be a huge problem, coupled with the fact that you also have this weakness on the a7 g1 diagonal. And after the removal of the e3 pawn, well, that's going to be a huge problem. Jeffery might be in trouble, Alejandro. What do you think?
No, I agree with that completely. Before we delve too much into it, let's go to see the prize fund of this tournament, see what the players are participating for. It's not just experience and it's not just for fun. It is a serious amount of money here.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, $6,000 for first place, $4,000 for second, and $3,000 for third. Prizes are split up if players end up with the same amount of points, except for first place. Remember that there will be a playoff for that position. In the B group, it's a slightly smaller prize fund, but of course they are slightly lower rated. $4,000 for first place, still very good. $2,500 for second and $2,000 for third. Let's just go through the horn around the horn real quick, and I have a feeling that some of the games are going to finish quite quickly. So let's go to those before they end up, as we do have the game between Hans Niemann and Sam Sevian on the screen. We're not going to go through the whole thing. It was a very deeply theoretical open Ray Lopez, which has been all of the rage in the last few years. And it didn't seem like Hans put any real pressure on Sam. And it's true that he's currently up a pawn, but as you see, this pawn on e5 is absolutely stuck. It's already attacked by both rooks. I don't see even the slightest
Is there
plan.
even a way to try, at least, to win this game? Potentially get the king to f4?
No,
Whenever you go king g3, I go king g5.
King g5, the game is over. Yeah.
This game is over.
You actually make zero progress, and I'm not really sure why Sam is taking such a long time here to think, but nobody is rushing him. He has plenty of time to figure out this draw. Very solid preparation by the player that tied for first in the U.S. Championship. Let's not forget that he had an amazing performance there, actually played the playoff against Wesley So and Fabiano Caruana. Didn't come ahead in those games, but still reaching such a position is just an incredible achievement.
It's been a great year for Sam, also for Hans as well.
Yeah, both of these players.
At the beginning of last year, in 2021, I think he was around 25-20. And then he went to Europe and he started playing tournament after tournament. And now he is like 26-50 and not stopping.
Yeah.
This is a clash between two emerging superstars of American chess.
Yeah, and Sevian also, I'll give him a lot of credit that he was stuck for a very long time in this range of 2640 to 2660. He had achieved that at a very young age, but it seemed like he wasn't making any progress. And recently, he had a couple of breakthrough tournaments. He had the U.S. Championship. He had that Grand Prix in Riga, where he also did rather well. And he has reached 2684. Certainly a milestone in his career, and is looking forward to breaking that magical 2700 barrier.
Absolutely, and we see him play rook to b5, this waiting game. You absolutely have no way to make any progress as white. The players, I would assume, after king to g3, if Sam responds instantaneously with king to g5, they will find the repetition and the game might be over in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, and worry not that if he doesn't play the move king g5, they will also draw.
He immediately plays it.
Yes. And this is going through the motions, probably
I think
handshake
we're going
very
to see
soon.
some rook e1, rook a5, rook e2, rook b5.
They're professionals, they find a way.
They will find a way, absolutely.
We can move out of this one. There's really nothing interesting to see here. Let's finish up the A group as we have the other games going on. Alex Lunderman playing against Ilya Nizhnik. I just want to put on the positions very quickly, assess them, and move on. In this one, it seems pretty clear that it's Alex Lunderman that is on the back foot. You can see that this knight on c3 is a bit of a monster. I don't know if it's going to be enough to win the game, but this knight on c3 it calls my attention, and Alex seems to be on the defensive side.
And let's not forget, these two players know each other very, very well. They are former teammates at Western University. I believe both of them graduated recently, but they have been roommates. They know each other very, very well. They've analyzed chess together, so they know their strengths and weaknesses.
Absolutely. Speaking of other collegiate players or former collegiate players, in Ray Robson, graduating also from Webster, playing against current UTRGV, University of Texas Rio Grande Valley student Camille Dragun. This one, I don't have an engine on it. It looks kind of a mess. I don't know how to assess this one so quickly.
Pawns are equal. We're going to call it equal.
That's the lazy way to do it, right? I like it. White has bishops. That's always nice, but this knight on h2 is kind of garbage, and I'm always worried about f4 coming in. Dynamic equality, and we'll move on. Yep. Jeffery Xiong, we already looked at. We don't like his position. And in the battle of our students of Misha Antipov and Dariusz Schwirtz, this one, it also looks more or less equal.
It looks equal, but I have to say from a couple of moves ago, I feel like black has made tremendous progress.
It does feel like that, right? This bishop on b6 is quite nicely anchored. The knight has returned to f5, where it pressures d4. Unfortunately, it always feels like I'm going to be missing a break. I feel that if this pawn was an f pawn and I got f6 in, I could definitely think of an advantage for black. But as long as d4 remains defended, I really don't see a way through.
And I think critical in this matchup is how they're doing on time, because both of them are sort of time trouble addicts.
Oh yeah, they're the slowest players ever. Misha Antipov with 21 minutes and Dariusz with 18 with only 11 moves to go. Now, they'll be fine. I think they'll be okay. And it's also depending on the dynamics of the position. This one doesn't have that many dynamics. There's not that much to calculate. You can play a lot of moves by feel without doing anything egregious. And here, as we expected, Hans Niemann has drawn his game against Sam Sevian. All right, let's take a look at Group B in that case. We have here Aram Mikhalian against Christopher Yu. We do count the pawns yet again, and Christopher is up 1 pawn.
Down 1 pawn.
Oh, sorry, Christopher is black. Yeah, Christopher is down 1 pawn, but he is pretty active. I do like the rook on c2. I just don't think that's enough to compensate for a pawn. This one seems more like black is going to probably hold, but will suffer a lot.
Specifically because that bishop on f1, which protects the critical square g2.
Yeah, you're always looking to trick white something like rook d2, rook takes g2, but as long as this bishop stays on f1, it liberates the rest of the army. In this case, it's the rooks. Except
the rook on b1, because if you leave the first rank, then I'm going to be able to pin you on the first rank. So you have to be careful with the rook on b1. But the rook on c5 is free to roam anywhere she wants.
Yeah, rook a5 might be coming. You never know. Maybe you throw in c4 just to have the pawn defended. You throw in c4, you play rook a5, you start attacking this pawn on a7, and you start asking questions that might not be so easily answered. Definitely white advantage. Not really sure if it's enough. Here I think rook a5 is an automatic, where you defend this pawn and attack the one on a7. White's better. I'm not sure if it's enough. Let's go to the game of Elshan Moriadabadi against Robert Hungaski. And this is a mess, some kind of King's Indian structure.
Complete mess.
It's a complete mess, right? This knight on c6 is really nice, but I also wonder if it's doing anything.
It's not, but it's preventing black from, at least at the moment, doubling up on the g file because of knight e7. That creates a very unpleasant fork. But for example, what if you just simply go rook to g7 to prepare that?
I was actually wondering if on rook g7, I'm kind of happy to play the move knight d8.
Knight d8, right? And now go to e6.
And perhaps for this reason, it's that we see Robert playing actually the move knight g5. It also covers the e6 square. The knight wasn't doing much on h7 to begin with. I don't quite see what the follow-up is. Is there any world where we're considering taking on f3 and taking on e4?
Absolutely, at some point, potentially. But I think it's critical that I double up on the g file, because that's going to allow me to have a lot of threats checkmating on the g file.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You do it patiently. The knight on g5 is fine. You don't have to take on f3 next move. I'm eyeing the possibility of, I didn't like rook g7 as much because of knight d8. Maybe we play your idea, but with rook f7. And then rook g7. This way the knight doesn't have that many squares to go to. I don't see white's plan, though.
So just so people understand what I'm talking about when I'm saying some checkmating threats, let's make some random moves. Let's go knight to a5. Just because you were asking me what the progress potentially could be for black, knight to a5, rook to c6 to start attacking some pawns could be an idea. And I do need your rook to get off the first rank.
You need my help, right?
I need your help a little bit.
Okay, let's just do it this way.
So rook to c6. And now I'm going to take with the h knight on f3. You're going to take back.
Yes, and
now I can go knight to h3.
Yeah, here we understand that this is winning, but knight h3 is even nicer.
Rook to f1. It seems like you're defending. Oh wait, never mind.
You are defending.
That's not
That's not checkmate. No, but knight f3 is actually crushing in this
true.
position.
That is true.
So yeah, it does tether the rook to the first rank, which is actually important, right? Is if I can double up on the g file and this tethers this rook to the defense of g1, I can at least claim I've made a little bit of progress, and at some point I'll hint that this knight takes f3, knight takes e4 will give me enough positional compensation that this knight is still far away from the action and that my pawns will roll. But it's still very theoretical. I'd rather be black.
It's not easy to break for any of the sides, but I feel like black has the more dynamic in his pieces.
I have to agree completely. Chris Repka, wow, this move rook h6 screams ugly, but perhaps there was no choice.
Yeah, this looks like it's almost over.
Yeah, this looks. It just looks like Chris is one good move away from winning.
So
I'm also
like
wondering why can't I not just play knight d5, right?
Yeah. I need to get rid of the knight. The knight is a very good blockading piece.
Yeah.
And I am threatening queen g5, queen f6.
Yeah, this is just devastating. I can't allow you to do that.
Devastating consequences for sure. So how are you going to defend against that?
I think I have to take it and then install something else on e7. I'm not really sure what.
And the question is, what do I take back with? Do I take back with the pawn and connect my pawns? Or do I take with a rook?
And get a tempo.
Try to get a tempo in. Let's take with the rook.
I like taking with the rook, queen e7, and maybe just queen f4, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't think you ever can take this pawn. There will always be a pen on the e file that will pick up the bishop. And I feel that queen b8 is a threat, queen e5 is.
Queen b8 is on tap, rook d6 is on tap.
Yeah,
this one is not looking good for black.
Surprisingly, Chris doesn't do that. He goes knight h3, which actually has a very not subtle but very strong idea of knight g5 and knight f7 that also looks completely devastating. Thank you for putting your rook on h6, right?
Yeah.
And not to mention that I think queen f4 is a threat, because then I'll have rook takes f5.
Rook takes f5.
Yeah.
Well, actually, rook takes f5 you can take back with the knight.
Yeah, never mind, that doesn't work.
But knight g5, knight f7 is so
very,
deadly because you
deadly.
don't have a minor piece to defend that f7 square. You would love to get your bishop to e8, but that's just simply impossible.
No, I think your student is cruising towards a win in this one. Another nice game by Repka, 3 in a row, and in style, not just by luck.
Absolutely. And another critical match that I think we should be having our eyes on is that one.
This one between Titus Tramavicius and JJ Alimarandi, who plays a very crazy brand of chess. Currently, he is down the exchange as black. He does have a pawn for it. And what worries me more than the material balance is that he is pretty tied up. You see these powerful rooks are doing a good job of controlling on the files. This bishop on b7 and this knight on a6 perhaps are not attacking that much, but are definitely controlling that rook on d8. I'm not sure how decisive white's advantage is, but I wouldn't be surprised it's actually just winning.
And you were mentioning black's pieces being tied up.
Yeah.
We see the bishop and the knight on a6 on the rim. It doesn't feel like they're very strong pieces, but actually they control the rook perfectly. The rook doesn't have any good moves on the 8th rank. You would love to put it on b8 or a8 and start attacking my pawn on a3, but unfortunately that's just simply impossible to do at this point.
Yeah, I think if black gets some kind of activity, you wouldn't really be thinking that black is doing so badly, especially with a powerful pawn on c4. But it is the fact that he is completely tied down. You can see this monster bishop makes sure that this knight on f6 doesn't join the fray, controls d5. Knight c7 is always kind of an issue here for the black side. He has played the move bishop f5. I have the feeling that Titus is a few moves away from winning this game.
So he's looking to put the bishop on d3.
Yeah, the only unfortunate thing is that even when you get
d6?
here, you always have to be worried about knight b4.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't think I should be allowing bishop d3.
So let's make some, well, let's improve our position, rook to d6.
I love rook d6. It's the first instinct in the position.
Maybe rook d4 also, because you are, after all, attacking a pawn on c4.
Yeah, I think rook d4, rook d6 both look quite good. I actually am warming up to rook lot to rook d4. You can always try to push the pawn all the way to c2, but once it reaches c2, it'll probably get captured. You always have knight b4, you always have rook c2, you always have rook c1. You don't really have the activity to defend that pawn. Maybe I'm forced to play b5, but then after knight c7, I start shedding material.
It feels like c3 has to be the critical choice for black at
Yes.
this point. Try to put the pawn on c2 and I'm assuming that's why he played the move bishop to f5, to control that square c2.
Right. Yeah, here though, f3, I feel like you're
f3 with the idea of g4 maybe.
g4, it makes the bishop choose.
Yeah.
It makes the bishop choose whether you want to go into this diagonal. You don't have access to the defense of c2 anymore, so this pawn on c3 is bye-bye. And if you go to g6, then you're going to start running into issues on undefended pieces.
I like that move.
Yeah, I think f3 is good. It also gives a loft, always super useful for the king. Yeah, this looks like it's close to winning for the white side. And the only game we haven't really looked at is the game between Abhimanyu Mishra, of course, a superstar of the chess world, is against Raja Harshit. I think material's even, but that's about the only good thing I can say about Black's position. His pawns are all discoordinated. These are all weak, whereas you can see the White has 2 solid pawn islands. His knight activity is probably what's keeping him in the game, and the question is how long that's going to last. Because I start trying to exchange those knights. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you start with knight dc4 or knight ec4, but both are extremely logical moves. The point is that if you are forced to give up this knight, I'm not seeing a better move. I open avenues to e4. The knight on c4 itself is beautiful. I can always install a pawn on b3 to defend it, and it gives me access to the move queen d6, after which, well, Black is a collection of weaknesses more than he is a position. Yeah, this looks rather bad for Black, unless he has some kind of tactic or some way to exploit the activity of this knight on b4. Maybe with the move queen d5. Trying to force white into taking.
e2, I'm not going to exchange those.
But you'll never exchange that. You'll just sidestep. Rook d1 is coming. Also, at some point, maybe c3 or queen takes e4.
And after queen takes c4, I am going to be a pawn up.
Yeah, you're going to be at least 1 pawn up. And again, the knight on c4 is not going anywhere.
So a couple of moves ago, it was Black who was a pawn up. Right now, it seems to be White. And actually, let's just go through this game, because it was quite an interesting opening. And
fashionable one, actually.
Fashionable,
this one,
yes. Yeah. I've seen it actually in the games of some of your students, Alejandro. So I'm sure you know a couple of things about this structure as well. Bishop to b5, knight to d7, and this idea of a4, a6, and g6. Now, of course, Black has a lot of options. You can play the move e5, you can play the move e6. You can also just stop this move a5 with the move b6. Black decides to go g6 and transition his bishop on g7. And after b5, a takes b5, en passant, Black decides not to recapture the pawn on b6 immediately, but in fact, he's going to focus his attention on expanding on the queen side with the move a5 and potentially threatening to take more space. Now, another key idea behind this move a5 is that, for example, if you take with the knight or with the queen on b6, after knight to d2, this knight is very close to jumping and putting a plug on the whole position of Black's on the queen side with a knight on a5. If the knight lands on a5, your position is going to be paralyzed, because this bishop is not going to go to b7. You're not going to have enough space for your pieces. That's going to be bad news for Black. That's why instead of recapturing immediately, Black decides to go a5. Also, it makes some space for the bishop potentially to go a6, e5. And we see this pawn sacrifice in the center. Now, what's the idea behind this pawn sacrifice? Because you're not recapturing the pawn anytime soon. But what you're doing is you're disrupting Black's pawn structure. Now, you see how many weaknesses we have, how many islands of pawns we have in Black's camp. We have 1, this pawn on a5, very weak pawn. We have 2, the pawn on c5, very weak pawn as well. And I have an incredible square for my knight on c4, potentially reinforced by this pawn on d3, as well as the pawn potentially landing on b3. This position strategically, it feels like it's very good for White. So what Black has to do is find some dynamic, potentially with the move f5, but unfortunately he was unable to find that. And we see after queen takes b6, knight to c4, we see a couple of exchanges. Right now, this pawn, the first weakness, has collapsed, and now we get this position. It feels like it's just a nagging pressure. Nagging strategical pressure from the White side. And unfortunately, after h4, f5 was a little bit too much, allowing White to placed his attention on this pawn on e6, another weakness in black's camp. And after this, we have this position, and we got to the point where you were mentioning, Alejandro, that black is in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. It just looks optically bad, and the more I look at the position and try to make a few moves for the black side, the more difficult it becomes. It does feel like it's very bad. Speaking of very bad, I also don't like Jeffrey's handling of that tough endgame. He is...
We said that one is a difficult one.
It's a difficult one, but it feels like it's close to falling apart at the moment. He's played the move bishop f3. And he has for now the idea that if I play rook a1, pinning on the first rank, I do have the move rook d1, so that's not an issue. And for that reason, I'm thinking, why not start with the move knight e3, control the d1 square, start hinting at the move rook a1 being a strong threat. You can see that this king is currently in some sort of back rank problems because of this powerful knight on e3. And I am struggling to find a move here for Jeffery.
This position is terrible. You want me to tell you the assessment of the engine?
Yeah, sure. But
black is crushing.
Crushing, yeah.
Minus
I'm not
3.5.
3.5, yeah, you're
Black
losing.
is completely crushing right now.
I just don't see what to play here.
The best move in the position is queen to g1. Good luck finding that move.
Queen g1. I wouldn't even consider this move.
Exactly.
So rook a1.
And now bishop to d1 and try to hang on like this.
And I mean, no amount of prayer is going to hold this position together. Man, bishop d1 feels like you're getting mated on this diagonal, right? Maybe there's nothing immediate, but man, they look scary.
That's key. There's nothing immediate. I'm just simply going to go back with the knight to g4.
Really?
Exactly. And I'm just going to tie you up like this.
Knight g4 here.
Knight g4, yeah.
Wow, I would have... Really? I would have never guessed this move.
Yep. Yeah, knight to g4, then I'm going to bring the queen to c3. I'm going to start putting pressure on the rook on d2. That's one of your main defenders.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, you're just simply not going to have enough pieces to defend the other pieces. And you don't have any counterplay. That is the problem.
No, the lack of counterplay is very serious. And this endgames are always lost, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this must be lost, yeah.
Yeah. Your king is too weak. And this is key when we have disimbalances, some pieces against the queen. If the queen has targets, specifically the opposing king, well, the queen in general is to be favored.
No, for sure. I'm not sure how easy it will be to win this. I do have a powerful pawn here. But yeah, I have trouble believing that this is enough for white. Yeah, I have too much trouble believing that. So a great opportunity here.
At this point, right? Huh? I go f5.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't believe it. But there's not much better here for Jeffery. Let's see the time situation. We only have 5 more moves until time control, so Aram is certainly trying to play as precisely as possible, doesn't need to rush. He does only have 5 minutes for those 5 moves, though, so he needs to be concrete.
And Jeffery has 22 minutes. That's one thing about Jeffery. He almost never gets in time trouble.
And he's reaching for the knight. I mean, it's such a logical move, even if you don't see the remainder of the sequence. Knight e3 is just such a tempting move in this position. And you defend the knight that's immediately attacked. You put it in a better square. It's in a dark square.
He's going for it. The knight lands on e3 with devastating consequences. This one is really not looking good for white unless Jeffery manages to create enough dynamic before time control. I think this one is going to go Aram's way. And Aram is going to be the new leader because right now I think he's standing on 1.5 out of 2 with a win against Jeffery. Jeffery is on 2 out of 2. Right?
Yeah, Jeffery's on perfect score, and this would leapfrog Aram to pole position. And what a victory that would be, of course, against the top-rated player in the event and with the black pieces.
Yeah. Huge victory.
Huge victory here. Aram, who's certainly shown incredible preparation in this tournament, very strong resilience. As I said, it's one of those players that has really impressed me on the amount of improvement that he has achieved since joining Webster University here in St. Louis. Credit certainly to coach Le Quang Liem over there at Webster.
No, absolutely. He came into the United States a couple of years ago. I think he was something along the lines of 25-50. And right now, he's a very strong contender around that 26-50 range.
Yeah, sometimes I see his games and I'm surprised he's not even slightly higher rated at 2606. He feels underrated.
Underrated for sure. Yeah.
All right. Let's let Jeffery figure it out in that position. Meanwhile, the game of Antipov and Schwiertz, I don't think we'll see too many changes before time control. The players will probably shuffle around a little bit. It's hard for me to figure out a plan for either side. I would really like to play something like King G6, H5, and 8 and G4, but I'm never able to actually defend this pawn on G5. So H5 is never going to be playable unless White voluntarily retreats the knight.
Which he did.
Which he did. Thank you, Misha, for the for throwing my explanation out the window. And can I play H5 immediately is the question.
I think he's trying to coax him into playing H5.
Yeah, and Darius doesn't even bother analyzing that. Immediately plays the move King G6. But now H5 I feel is a threat. I'm not really sure what it does, but I like the space. The more I see the move, the more I realize it doesn't do anything.
I think one of the things that Mishra is getting ready for whenever Black plays the move H5 is to meet that with the move G4.
Yeah, G4 actually becomes quite annoying.
And I think this is why he played knight to H2.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it has ideas of potentially getting the knight to F6, but the question is, does that work right now? So let's say knight to G4. Try to place the knight to F6.
The thing is that even if you reach... I'm just going to push to there.
Sure.
And even in positions where I cleanly give up my exchange...
Oh, okay.
I'm not really sure that White is better.
So rook to A8.
Yeah. Oh, because of this pawn.
Let's try to invade. Yeah.
I'm trying to get to my pawn, just quite.
But I see what you're saying,
Quite
Alejandro.
mild, yeah.
I definitely see what you're saying. It doesn't feel like White has a clean way of breaking through, except this idea of rook B8, rook takes B7. But even after that, potentially with the rook on B7, I'm going to just simply put my rook on the 8th rank on F8. And how do you get the rook back?
Yeah, what we're saying is that if I just randomly pass moves, even in this position, even here after you take on B7 and I just put my rook back, this rook might just be completely stuck.
Right.
So knight d6 is actually going to immediately recapture it. Yes, you can sacrifice your rook for the bishop, but then what advantage does White have?
And speaking of that knight d6, maybe I can just play knight d6 even before that and try to find a better square for my knight.
Yeah, it feels like Black is really
enough compensation.
Enough compensation, not in any danger, but also not playing for a win. Let us see what else we got. I don't really know why, how, or in which world Ilya Nishnik put the knight on c3 on a3. So everything I know about chess says don't put the knight on a3. Yeah, like knight on the rim is dim, and if this bishop comes to d3, this knight can't move. But I guess it's the specifics of the position. He's trying to play something like queen c3. The knight would be a very good, powerful piece if these queens get traded. But that being said, I don't know why I can't play bishop d3, which he has played. Queen c3, and then just queen d1 or queen f1, something.
And right now with this knight on a3, the bishop on d3 is just
just controls the
dominating the knight.
I don't feel that Landerman can really be better in this position. But
no way.
But this knight on a3 is really ridiculous. What is the knight doing there?
Well, you're going to go queen to d1, right? And
yeah, queen d1.
I think I will be able to force matters after queen to b2, if I'm concerned at any point.
Queen b2, yeah, of course. Queen b2, and now you
Which
have
forces
this.
queen to e2 to defend that pawn on a2, and then I can simply just go back queen to c3.
Yeah, I could make a draw. I'm not really sure that's what I'm looking for. I could maybe take, though, here and play knight c2, because you really don't want to play for... Huh?
Not knight b1, knight c3?
Knight b1, knight c3 might be even stronger. Although I don't know which one's stronger, because this might be lost also, right?
I see what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm trying to force you to see the dark squares in this position. You don't have a dark square defender, only the pawn on e3. And since this knight is kicking this pawn away, e4 and the king penetrating might be winning. That being said, perhaps even more direct is to just go knight b1, knight c3 and take this pawn, because this pawn on b4 does take en passant. You can't push it twice. Yeah, perhaps it's still Nishnik because of the specifics of the position.
So we do have the queen on b2 right now.
We do have the queen on b2. Yeah, and I think maybe it is wiser not to really bother defending this pawn on a2, but start trying to look for some sort of counterplay. I want to get rid of this bishop from the d file so I can play queen d4 check the moment that you take on a2. But surprisingly, I don't have many great options for it. I would like to put it on e4, but this kind of allows knight b5. My point was that queen takes queen d4 check,
yeah.
and then I'm going to maybe give you checks on the 8th rank, maybe put my queen on f6 and attack f7, maybe bishop takes g6 will be a perpetual, but you don't start with that move. You actually start with the move knight b5.
Well, he's getting ready to play a move, and I have a feeling bishop to e4 might come on the board.
What is our time situation? 2 minutes for Lenderman, 21
That's
minutes
not
for
a lot.
Nishnik.
And
He has
how many moves?
Couple moves, three moves. Three moves to
moves.
make. So it's not a huge time pressure. He does play the move bishop e4. It was my instinct, and I can see that Lenderman is also attracted to the move. As I mentioned, with the knight on a3, I don't think I can take on a2 and claim any kind of winning chances. Perhaps you do have to play the move knight b5. But even after knight b5,
Well, after knight b5, we have bishop takes g6, right?
I believe you. If you take with the f-pawn, I understand
Queen
that.
to d7,
Oh, yeah, of course.
if you take with the king, queen to d3, and if you go knight to c3, which is the big question, I think that's just simply going to be a perpetual after queen to d4.
Yeah, I don't believe in knight c3.
Queen
Check.
d4, you take,
Here,
and now queen to g4.
Check, and you take here with check. You always have queen d8 when the king tries to hide on the queen side via h7, g8, and f8. Yeah, your king's not going anywhere.
Now we see the geometry of chess.
It could get mated.
You can.
You can try to get mated in some kind of scenario like this, but you're not going to be playing for a win in any of these situations. So you might as well take the draw. Yeah, this is actually an important resource, right? Knight b5, bishop takes g6, cements that draw.
So let's see, knight b5 is not yet on the board. Bishop to e4 was played. But before that, because this is probably going to take a while, let's take a look at what is happening in the key matchup in the B group.
Oh, yes. This one
because it seems like it's over.
Yeah, it's over.
It seems like it's pretty much over. Look at this rook. First of all, I'm on exchange up, right?
I mean, that's enough.
I managed to get an exchange. I'm not 100% sure how. Let's see. After knight to f3, trying to go to g5, rook to h8, knight to g5, and now we see knight to c6, rook to f7. You cannot even take this pawn back, because after king takes f7, I'm just simply going to go rook to e7, and that's going to lead to checkmates. So he cannot take that pawn, but leaving this pawn ready to promote on the 7th rank is not a good alternative. Bishop to b7, rook to d5, rook to f8, rook to e7. This is the position. 4 minutes for Khanin right now, with 8 moves to go, and I don't think you're going to survive 8 more moves at this point.
No, he has a little bit of counterplay because of this light square battery, but the rook on d5 is doing a great job. Actually, let me switch to that game so that we're not talking about a different one. Yeah, it feels like it's just far from enough.
If you try to take this, I think I'm just simply going to take and queen to h6,
Yeah,
right?
queen h6. I also think queen e1 was winning instead of taking.
Yes.
I think everything's
queen
winning.
e1 is the computer move, trying to go queen to e5.
Yeah,
you cannot take because I'm going to infiltrate with the queen on the 7th. Yeah,
Yeah,
this one
this
is
is
hopeless.
just over,
Hopeless. Yeah.
Nice. So we expect Chris Repka to be the early leader with 3 points. That might be distancing himself from the field quite a bit.
He will be.
Can we take a look maybe at the standings of Group B to remember who was chasing him? Because Khanin was one of his close suitors there with 1.5.
He was on 1.5.
Who else
and I
was
think
1.5?
Christopher Yu was also
That sounds
1.5.
right. Christopher Yu won his first game against Robert Hungaski. There we have it. And drew his second game quite uneventfully. So yes, it's up to Christopher Yu. Let's take a look at that game then.
Well, Christopher is now winning that endgame. That's for sure. He might be losing that one because he was a pawn down in that rooks and bishop endgame.
Yeah, we can go to that. And it's looking increasingly bad. We do have 1 minute and 37 there for Armin Mikhailian, but he has reached move 40, which means that he gets an extra 30 minutes. He doesn't have to worry about it. He has just made the move h5 relatively committal, I have to say. But
And this was move 41. It wasn't move 40.
it wasn't one move 40, yeah.
No.
He had time to think about this one.
Okay, so let's try to understand why this move h5. If you just simply take, right? Because that's the...
With the pawn?
Yeah.
Okay, you could take rook h4, rook takes h5 to preserve the structure, but man,
Facing
that rook
on
is...
h5, I don't want to see that rook on h5.
No, that rook on h5 is so awkward, so far from the game. So pawn takes h5, let's say,
And I think rook to d3 now, right? You want to exchange the active rook of black
Yeah.
for one of your more passive rooks and leave the rook passive on c7 against the very active rook on a6.
That being said, I'm not... How do we evaluate something like this, right?
Rook a5.
Yeah, rook a5, I go king d4, you take on f5.
Pick up one pawn.
Yeah,
and
you're
I'm
going to
to pick
definitely...
up the second one.
You're definitely picking up some more stuff on the king side, and now this is a very serious winning chances. Oh, I like this. I actually like h5 a lot. The more I see it, the more I like it.
So let's see, after rook to d3, so let's take on h5, rook to d3. Maybe you can go somewhere else with the rook, but actually you don't have anywhere else to go.
Yeah, the problem is a rook d6, right? If you move off of the file, you just rook d6 will pick up the bishop.
And if you buy the bullet and take on c4,
Uh,
are you surviving? Probably not, huh?
Let
Rook
me-
c4, rook d6, king e5. And now, maybe just rook takes h6.
although this is not as bad as the other variations. It doesn't feel very pleasant, right? Rook a5 is coming, and rook h5 is coming.
You're hanging on by a thread at this point with black.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't really ask for much more than that from the position. Yeah, h5, right?
Good move, by the way.
I like
this
h5 a
move.
lot. And if you are forced to play g5 here as black, you just say, I have a huge concession, because f5 is certainly undefended. The rook on d3 is always going to be a more powerful move, because once you trade, the bishop immediately targets that pawn. And because it opens the avenue for this rook, or any rook on the 6th rank, towards the h6 pawn.
The
so
pawn on
h5
h6 is
really
going to be a
nice.
huge weakness,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, I think if you're going to play between gh and g5, you might as well take the pawn on h5. I don't think there's an advantage on playing g5 here. It doesn't
Yeah.
look pretty. It does not look like a pretty defense here for Christopher Yu.
Serious chances for Mikhailian to score his first victory in this event.
Absolutely. Speaking of great winning chances, let's take a look if the game of Titus Stramavicius has made any progress. What is going on here? It feels very concrete at the moment, but I'm not entirely so sure if this was correct. So let's take a look back at how we got here. We looked at the move rook d4, c3, and I like the move f3 in this position. I don't know what the engine said, but the move...
f3 was much better than rook c4.
Yeah, rook c4 looks a little weird to me because I like the control. The rook on d8 is not participating in the position right now. Let's control black's pieces. Let's take away the squares from the f5 bishop. Let's give myself a loft. I'm not... Okay, but this is a forcing line, right? c2, he wants to trade the rooks. Takes bishop g6 just to unpin the knight. It's a bit of a sad move, but okay, black's position can't really ask for that much. f4. Okay, so I guess it prevents knight e5. That's an important detail. Knight e5 might be a threat in certain positions because knight d3 helps this pawn promote. And of course, you cannot take it because c1 will promote as well. So you go f4 to prevent that, but after bishop d3 and rook c1, I'm wondering how clear this endgame is after knight c5. I think it's the,
Probably the best
it's the
move.
only move,
Yeah.
I think, because otherwise, notice the knight b4 is a huge threat, double attack here. So you really do have to play knight c5. And the idea is that if knight b4,
Now you can just simply go bishop to g6 back, right?
yeah, I can just go bishop g6.
Or bishop to e4.
Maybe, yeah, bishop e4 is actually a better move. The point is that if you take on c2, the move knight b3 forces the rook away from the knight, and I can capture on c2, and then bishop is always defending the knight on b3. I don't think this quite works for white, and to the point where after bishop e4, I don't see a good move because knight b3 is coming. You might have to bail out with like rook takes c2 or something. It's clearly not what you want. So critical must be takes. The idea of white will be now to pass this pawn, but I do have these constructions with c4 that might be tough to overcome. So this really comes down to tempi, right?
It's a very concrete situation right
It's
now.
very concrete, yeah. So let's
So let's see,
rush,
a4,
yeah?
right?
I assume this guy goes here.
Let's keep pushing, a5.
And so the question is, if knight b4, a6.
Wait, but knight to c3? What do you do after knight c3?
Knight c3.
Because that's, I mean, I'm threatening knight to e2, and that's a problem.
That is a problem indeed. Take a look that in many scenarios, bishop on e4 is still going to catch this pawn. Knight a2 is a problem. Knight e2 is a problem.
Okay, maybe we were too fast with making the moves, Alejandro, because I think this might be winning for black.
Yeah. So wait, what's going on? I don't really like going into this if I have to play king f2. I mean, I might have to.
But that's what they teach us when we first start learning chess. Whenever you get to the endgame, you want to bring the king to the center.
Yeah.
Let's apply those principles, Alejandro. Let's play good chess.
If I played good chess, I'd be playing up there. I just calculate.
No more commentary for us.
Yes.
King to e1. Let's go
king
king
to
to
e1. No, I'm not lying. This looks very unconvincing. What if I just go here anyway?
Okay. King to d2.
Knight e2.
That's fine. And now I take on d3
Take.
and take on c2. Now I start pushing. Now it's time to start pushing.
Am I in the square? Boom, 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 I am. So a4, I go king e7.
Oh, you are. Okay. So let's not start pushing. I'm actually going to go king to d3, right?
This is hanging.
Right now. Yes, that's fine. You can take that. I just want to stop your king.
But do you?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure
So
either,
I
right?
take on c5.
I take on c5. You know, this might be winning.
Definitely not convincing.
But definitely
No.
not convincing,
No,
right?
No, not even close.
Not even close.
Not even close.
I mean,
Yeah, you can go king d8, king c7. I'm not 100% sure if this is any more even advantage.
Yeah, you go here, or whatever, king c7. I'm starting to threaten to just put the king here, and yeah, you can try to win this. But I don't think so. I think the knight is enough for counterplay. Should be able to sacrifice itself for the last remaining pawns with the help of the other three. This looks very unconvincing.
It does.
So what are we missing? Rook c1, knight c5. You have to take. I don't see another move. Do you take here?
Okay, so what if I just simply go... knight b4, you said bishop to e4, and I don't have a good way to defend against knight to b3. Okay.
Yes.
So I have to take on c5.
Mm-hmm.
This is not easy.
No, I feel like white is giving black unnecessary chances.
So let's try to control the knight. Let's go bishop to b7 first.
Okay, bishop b7, but I can start bringing my king in as well.
Right.
And then you bring yours.
And now I bring my king.
And
King
then
to
I bring
f3.
my king.
King to e3.
And I'll go bring my king.
That's not your king.
That's not your king, it's a pawn. It's been a long day.
King to d4.
Yeah, I like king d4 to control...
Followed by bishop to a6.
Yeah, bishop a6 is a huge problem. This might actually just be crushing, yeah?
I think so. I think once my king goes to d4, it might be
I like this move, bishop b7. I think it's the key to the position. It controls the knight. That's very good. Yeah, and I'm just going to go ahead and assume knight e4, bishop takes is just lost.
Should be, because my plan is very simple as white after that. I will just free my rook from the defense of this promotion with king coming to d2, and then I'm just going to push the a pawn.
Yeah, you just do this, and you actually have all the time in the world. You can actually go g3 first, put this king here, and then play with your rook.
Yeah, this
has to be winning. So maybe that's why we don't see that move. We actually see the move bishop e4 played instead. Okay, it has the idea, I imagine, of controlling this bishop, and if knight b4, you have the idea of knight c5. This just transposes to something we didn't like for white. And this is the reason why quickly takes was played, and then a knight b4, and the big difference is that after knight c5...
What is the big difference?
The big difference is that after knight c5...
Wait a minute.
What? The big difference is after knight c5... All right, wait, come on, guys. We're grandmasters, yeah? What is the difference?
Okay, so you can go into this endgame, I would assume. Knight takes c2, knight to b3. This is the only thing I'm seeing.
Okay.
Rook to b1. Bishop takes c2, rook to b2.
But yeah, I even have bishop d1. I understand that.
Bishop d1, king f2. And now you have to move the knight away because I'm threatening king to e1, and then I will pick up your b6 pawn. But is that winning?
Oh,
I don't think even if I take your b6 pawn, you should be able to defend that, right?
Yeah, what are we missing? Knight c5 was played,
I don't think we're missing anything.
and he played
Knight a2?
what? What?
Knight a2.
What if I play knight b3?
Rook to e1 and get the knight to c1. I think this is his idea.
Starts to get scary for white, no?
But just a second, I mean, do you have any threats right now? What if I just bring my king to e7?
The other question is, do you have any threats ever?
Exactly.
Right? If I put my pawn on f5, which I think I do at some point, cement
Well,
the bishop.
first I have to stop you from getting your king to e3. I think
but
if I
why?
manage to do that,
But why? We're being told that Chris Repka, as we expected, did win his game. But no, my point is that even if you get your king to e3, then what?
then at least I'm not losing.
But what? What?
Oh man, I think
Yeah, this was a...
Ali Marandi might be back into this game.
It's definitely the best position he's had since like move 5, but it's still...
All right, I picked Alejandro. I picked at the engine.
And?
Black is better.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all.
Black is better already. King to e7.
Yeah, king to e7. You don't have king f2, of course, because knight d3 picks up the rook. But if you go through f1...
Where are you headed? If you go to f1, first of all, you take that square away from your rook. So maybe I have ideas of knight to... No, knight to b3, you still have rook e1. Okay.
Yeah, here you still have...
So he played something. What did he do?
Even here, you know, you start going king d6. And I'm not really sure how you make progress. I mean...
He played f5.
f5, I understand f5.
I like this move.
I understand that move. It cements the bishop, right, against every variation. That being said, the more I analyze the position, the more unnecessary
By the way,
move
20
looks.
seconds. Last move before the time control for white.
Yeah, he'll play king f1, I'm pretty sure. Oh, never mind.
No, rook to e1 was
Shows you how
played.
great commentators we are.
Rook to e1.
Rook to e1, sorry?
No, rook to f1.
f1, I think I saw. Elshan Moriadabadi has drawn his game against Robert Tungaski. We felt that was very unpleasant, so we'll go back to see it. Rook f1 currently on the board. And that's it, right? That's move 40?
That's move 40 for white.
But Ali Marandi has 8
Ali Marandi
minutes
has
and a
8
half,
minutes
right?
to make his final move before the time control.
And what's the engine saying about this inclusion of f5 and rook f1?
It's still just a slight advantage for black.
Hey,
Black is just going to play a slow game. King to f7, king to e6, king to d5, try to take the center. If I manage to get my king all the way here, well, you can resign, right? So you'll have to find a way to stop me from getting my king all the way to the queen side. Potentially meet that king in the middle with white's king. Let's see if you're in time. So king to f2, king to e6, king to e3, king to d5, king to d2, king to c4.
Yeah,
These are all computer moves.
Yeah, you have to play knight c1 at this point because king b3 is a huge threat.
And it's, oh my goodness, but this is like a one tempo type of situation because right now if my king would be able to land on c3, this would be game over.
Yeah, not to mention you hung your pawn on g2 at some point and I'm just assuming you cannot take it because of rook g1.
This looks extremely scary for white.
It went from clearly winning.
Clearly winning. 1.6.
No, even this one, I'm not so sure. I think that rook d4, c3, the move that we liked, f3.
This was the critical move, and the engine was considering the move knight to b4.
I also love the
prophylactic
move
move
knight b4.
against this pawn expansion on c2. Now, for example, if you go pawn on c2 now, which one is the best piece for black in the position? The bishop on f5, right?
Yeah.
It does everything. These knights are superfluous knights. They're stepping on each other's hooves. They're not great knights. I'm simply going to go bishop to a6, followed by bishop to d3, exchange this bishop, and that's going to allow me to also capture the pawn on c2, which is going to end the game. So this idea of knight to b4, bishop to a6 was crucial at this point. But it's not so easy to play knight to b4, right? Because you want to control the rook. You want to have this bishop on b7 controlling c8 and a8. You want to have your knight to, on a6 protecting against the rook coming to b8. So knight to b4 is not a very natural move, I would say. Also, at this point, he only had 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Yeah.
For 9 moves. It's not an easy position.
No,
with a pawn on c3, c2, never an easy position.
There's always counterplay, right? Things can always go wrong. All right, let's
Wait, what is happening? I see a knight jumping around. Knight is on d3 right
I mean,
now.
he played knight d3, which is quite honestly a logical move.
Probably will have to be followed for white by knight to c1, right?
I don't think I have a threat. But you also don't have a move. Because if you don't play knight c1, I actually don't know what you play. The rook is stuck, the king is stuck, and the king is coming. So knight c1 looks more or less forced. But here I can even start considering to play knight b2.
We don't want to take, right?
No,
This should be bad. No, we want to keep the knights on the board.
Yeah, I think you play knight b2, and then you start harassing that pawn on a3. Yeah, black is never losing this. I wonder how often you win it, but you're never losing it.
We're going to have to wait and see.
All right, let's take a look at other games that have been finishing up their time pressure. Abhimanyu Mishra against your student, Raja Harshit. Let's see what is going on. I still feel that black's position is on the brink of collapse, but he's done a good job not to fall apart immediately. That being said, I just spotted the move f3. And if that rook comes into the game, of course, you don't want to exchange this weak pawn on e4, but it's not an exchange of pawns, because if you take on f3, I am just going to mate you, I assume, in this position, because the queen is coming to f7, so that's not much of an alternative. And pawn
f3
takes,
is a great move, by
yeah,
the way.
f3 just looks like it's a cruncher.
And you know what the problem is for Harshit right now? White has all the time in the world to find it, because he just made time control. This
Yeah,
is move
it's
41.
It's also a very logical move, right?
It is.
The moment you find it, you're like, oh yeah.
You just need to calculate.
Open the rook against the king. The knight is very far away. This king lacks defenders. This one looks pretty straightforward. Winning for the youngster who would pick up his first point here, his first full point here in the Spring Classic. And Raja having a tough event.
Tough event so far.
Event, yeah.
0 out
Zero
of 2,
3.
going into 0 out of 3 right now.
Yeah, and trust me, this is not a reflection of his chess. It's just a reflection of how strong this is of a tournament, a very strong round robin indeed. We've seen great players start with 0 out of 3 in here at the St. Louis Chess Club.
Well, I can tell you from my own experience, one of the last tournaments, I think the penultimate tournament that I played before my, let's say, retirement before COVID, because I haven't played in 2.5 years. Oh my goodness.
Are you inactive?
I am inactive right now, yes, unfortunately. I'm not even on the Romanian list anymore. But I played here at the St. Louis Chess Club, and I had the worst tournament in my life. I lost, I think, 20-something points. Jeez. And I started off with half out of 5. It's just depressing.
Yeah.
Because in an open tournament, you're going to play some weaker opposition. Whenever you lose a game, you're going to play a weaker opposition. Here, you're going to play killers. Every single game, you're going to face killers. And it's extremely, extremely difficult when you're demotivated, basically, by losing so many games to put up a good performance. And this is exactly what we're seeing right now from Harshit as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Another person that is not having the tournament of his life seems to be Kamil Dragoon, as he is currently facing Ray Robson. But you can see the material balance on the board. Those two knights are hoppity hop. I'm not really sure how this happened. The bishops from white disappeared. And I'm very scared about white's king, because, well, they say that a queen and a knight are very attacking, powerful combination, but if you add another knight to the mix, well, that might just be game over. Currently, the knight on f6 is hitting the rook on e8. You have to do something about that. But also the move knight e4 is a huge threat, because the coordination of this knight and this queen attacking g2 is only being defended by this queen on the diagonal. If that blocks the diagonal from the queen, that might be all she wrote. Both sides have only 1 minute left.
This game is over.
He has played the move rook a8. I assume that his idea is to come down and defend like this, but also you start running into other problems, right? Knight e2 is kind of...
That is game over.
That looks checkmate. That looks like checkmate.
Yes.
I don't really see how to defend
You can
against
play
this.
rook to a1, give up the rook, and that's it.
We resign before we do that, right? These are professionals.
No, this is it.
This is just a game over, yeah. This is checkmate in, I don't know, so few moves.
Well, before the last move, the computer's best move was actually rook to h8, so you can understand how bad it is.
This is completely lost. Yeah. The actual checkmating patterns with the knight and the...
And I do think knight to e2 is on the board, and that's just going to force resignation.
Well, Ray starting with a strong 2.5 out of 3, but Kamil will be falling down to 0.5 out of 3. Again, not a reflection of the strength of the Polish player, but more a reflection of how strong this tournament is. Ray Robson, a seasoned veteran of the St. Louis Chess Club, played in U.S. championships. He's played in many spring classics, always a fighting spirit, always very well prepared, an absolute chess professional. And he is showing his strength here, coming from a complicated, very double-edged position, outplaying his rival. And we are expecting
Maybe we
a
can
handshake
see a couple of seconds for the resignation, and there you have it.
And
Ray Robson moves on to 2.5 out of 3.
2.5 out of 3, a very good start there for him. But somebody else with a great start, even better than 2.5 out of 3, is 3 out of 3. We have in the studio Chris Repka.
Thank you, Alejandro. Yes, we are here with a very happy victor of the round. That is Christopher Repka, who is perfect, Mr. Perfect in this tournament right now, 3 out of 3. Chris, first of all, congratulations. How do you feel right now?
Thank you. I feel great. It's not the start I expected, even though it's the start I was hoping for. And especially today, it was from the opening, I didn't feel like I was doing that great. I didn't know what I was doing, actually, and I was surprised how fast I achieved an advantage.
Let's look through the game. Tell us, which do you think are the critical moments?
Well, I think the critical moment...
Just 1 second. I'm pulling it up. Here it is.
Well, the opening was something that I was looking at, but I didn't look at it for a long while. And I didn't know the move dc4, so I wasn't very happy right now, but I was like, okay, knight c3, like, that's probably not a bad move. And now I didn't know what to do at all, so I put my knight on d5, but I didn't like that the d4 square is just so weak. I wasn't sure how to evaluate it. And I saw the position, he played knight d4, I think that was all good. And now the critical moment arose after e takes d4, h3, because I think that he has two options here. He can either play bishop c8 or he can play bishop f3. If he plays bishop f3, I think the position is simplified. Maybe it's tiny bit more pleasant for white because I have more pawns on with my king, and with the opposite colored bishops, I think it's important to have a good defense of your king. And he chose to play
After bishop takes f3, you would take with, I would assume, queen?
Yeah, queen takes, bishop takes, queen takes, knight takes d5.
Would you take on d5 as black, or would you play a c6 right now?
I thought that c6 is not that good because of knight f6, but maybe I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But that was what I was looking at, that potentially I have rook d1 and I gained a tempi, and I thought maybe it's good. Because after queen d6, I have e5, and queen e5 runs into knight d7 fork.
Oh. Okay, so
put that on the board.
Rook to d1, queen to d6, and now e5, crucial move.
Full of tricks.
Yeah, that was my trick. But he didn't go into this. I think he should have, maybe. But bishop c8 at first looked very dangerous because I was looking at it and I'm like, I cannot take on d4 because c6, knight e7, queen e7. And despite the fact that I'm a pawn up, he has just... the b2 is hanging and he is threatening rook d8. He has two bishops.
Well, I think you're just losing that extra pawn. Next move.
Yeah, I might even be losing, period, because I don't like this position.
You have to go knight b3 or knight c2.
No, that's just very sad.
Yeah, very sad. So I was happy to have, but I saw this a few moves back, and I saw the move rook e1, which I was happy with. And now I think it was another crucial moment. He played c6. Mm-hmm. Which I think helped me because, yeah, even the computer agrees with me, because knight f4, e5, e6 was my only plan in the position. And I thought that instead of c6, if he played c5, despite the fact that my knight is pretty good on d5, I think he has two bishops, he has a nice pawn on d4, and I think it's just a position. I am not sure who's better. I felt like black could potentially be slightly better.
All right, so c6 helped you out a little bit, and I'm sure you were very happy to see the move c5 played in this position.
I was happy to see the move a5 played, because I wasn't sure after e5 how to even defend against e6. Mm-hmm. I didn't like his move a5. I think he underestimated my attack there.
So I think after c5 you played this move e6, breaking through, and I believe f5 was a complete blunder. What the engine was mentioning here was g5.
g5.
Did you consider this move?
I was looking at it. I was thinking that g5 usually is not good. And I was looking at it. It's a bit messy, but I thought that I should find a way to be at least slightly better.
Maybe take on f7, knight h5.
Yeah, something simple like that. I just thought his king is so weak that even though he has some things going for him, it's probably slightly better for me.
And in the game, after move f5, it seemed like this clamp. He just was unable to get out of it. Of course, the pawn on e6 a monster, the bishop on g2 a monster, the knight on f4 is great, and nothing is going right for the black side.
Yeah, I think what he was afraid of, he played f5. If you go a little bit back, he was worried. He thought that he would play queen d6 probably. But what I was planning after queen d6 was e takes f7, rook takes f7, knight d3 to threaten knight d5, and after knight c6 I have knight d2, threatening both knight d4 and bishop d5. That was my plan.
Feels like black is just down development.
10 piece, yeah.
Which he kind of graciously gave with the move a5.
a5, c6, c5. Yeah, he lost too many 10 pieces. Bishop g4, bishop c8.
Yeah, that's just too many. I think maybe not even that many, like one too many, maybe two too many, but that's all the game takes. And it felt that after this position, you're just cruising towards a victory. Well, Chris, an incredible start there, 3 out of 3. As this game is over right now, I believe
that one was a draw as well. Yep.
Yes.
Alex managed to survive.
Alex did manage to survive that slightly unpleasant position, but he is a very resourceful player.
Well, Chris, congratulations. 3 out of 3. What are your ambitions right now for the tournament?
I'm just gonna go get some dinner and play it game by game. I realized that it's such a long tournament with very good players, and I'm just grateful to be in the position I'm in. And yeah, we'll see what I make out of it.
Well, congratulations, and we're looking forward to see you in the next rounds.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we do have some results coming in. Of course, the big one on Group A is Ray Robson defeating Kamil Dragun. Let's take a quick look at Jeffery Xiong's position. I'm not really sure how they got here. This might still be hopeless for young Jeffery. It seems like he has lost a pawn. That is not surprising. What is surprising is he only lost a pawn. But after the move knight e3, we left it off here. h3, he did not find the move queen g1, which is just an incredible move. Rook a1, bishop f1, and I think this is a nice solution. Queen f1 check, takes, rook d3, takes on g3, and he has not only won a pawn, but probably the best pawn you can win, the g-pawn.
And the knight is still on h4.
Yeah, the knight's still on h4, hasn't gone
anywhere. It's been there for the last 20 moves.
That's incredible. This pawn on d6 should fall at some point. I was wondering why you can't play f5, but...
Or rook a6. Rook a6, you just lose the knight.
The knight, but f5 looks pretty compelling. All right, I assume there's a reason.
f5, maybe he was concerned about
knight f5? No.
No, but that's
a knight, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe in it. All right, so we got this position, and it still looks pretty hopeless to me. This pawn on d6 is a little too further advanced. I feel like I'm just going to go king e6 and somehow collect it.
Yeah.
This looks winning, right?
And anytime we change the rooks, it's going to be game over.
Yeah.
Because we know knight and pawn endgames usually resemble just pawn endgames, and pawn endgames with a pawn down, you're generally lost.
Yeah, but it's not even going to be one pawn down.
You're going to be two pawns down.
Yeah. Yeah, this one looks like Aram is doing a great job. Absolutely fantastic performance here by the Webster student. Let's take a look at our students. Misha Antipov and Darius Schwirtz.
The knight did land on f6, okay.
What I am wondering is, what route did this rook take?
But okay, you landed the knight on f6, but you lost the pawn in the process.
What happened here? All right, let me go back. I am very confused about all these things. All right, so he did play the move king g6. We left it off here, knight g4. We consider this. We thought h5 was fine, but maybe rook knight takes e3 is also a move that makes a lot of sense. Knight takes e3, rook, okay, h5, so as to not allow the knight back. We're thinking about g4 around here, but it seems like he never played it. And h4 was played. Still, g4 looks kind of tempting. I really don't know. Knight g4 he played instead. It actually released the lock on this rook on f3 and allowed it to transfer to the king side, to the queen side, sorry. And here you are actually faced with a double attack. It's not just that I'm doing the obvious by attacking the pawn on b5, but also this rook is threatening, to even more crunchy. Take all the pawns on the third rank.
Knight f6 makes a lot of sense. You still have some sort of compensation, right, as white?
You do, but at this moment I feel that we went from a more or less equal position to black being the one playing for a win. But we can ask the opinion of a stronger player than us who is joining us in the studio. We have Ray Robson with an incredible start, 2.5 out of 3, despite starting with 2 of those 3 games being with black. Ray, how's it feel?
Yeah, it feels pretty good. I mean, I don't know. Today's game was pretty complicated. I'm not really sure what to think about it. I think it was...
It started off quite slow with the Giocopiano, but after that it just exploded.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Italian isn't really... I mean, it's kind of a slow line, but it's very complicated.
Not anymore.
These days there's tons of theory. So I actually played, I think, a novelty in the opening with d5.
Let me get to that point. Way back here.
Yeah.
d5 in this position.
Yeah, because already knight d7 is a little bit unusual, and normally the idea would be to play with f5 if you're going to move the knight to d7.
Ray, I have to ask you one question. How do you keep all the Italians straight? How do you not confuse one with the other?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I get confused also. I guess, let's say if you're black, I guess you just try to choose like one sort of setup for a particular game and just look at all the lines in that variation. If you're white, you probably need to remember a lot more because black can do so many different things. So it's a difficult opening, to prepare. But yeah, I mean, what he did was interesting. Take 6, knight e3, all very natural. I played f5, and then he went d4. And after e4, I spent a lot of time because I thought e4 he was going to play c4, which is like very sharp. So I used up all my time advantage thinking about this, and then if bishop f7.
Right, you spent all your time.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Bishop f7, d5. One idea was knight e5, knight takes e5, knight takes, bishop c5.
Bishop c5 here.
So he traps my rook, but I should have some play. Knight can come to d3, queen can come to g5 with some threats. It's very complicated. So that's what I was thinking about. But instead he just played knight h2 immediately. And so I felt really dumb because I would have moved instantly if I knew he was going to play knight h2. But yeah, this position is still very unclear. Like I can play f4, which looks very tempting. Looks like I have a big attack, but after he just moves the bishop back, I don't know how to continue. Yeah, bishop,
C1.
not sure which one, but one of the squares. Then e4 is weakened now because my f-pawns move, so c4 is an idea always. And his knight now has a square on g4 in the future.
Yeah.
So it's not clear. So instead, I kind of played much more slowly, and then the game was, just a lot of maneuvering, but it felt like he was putting some practical pressure on me. I didn't think my position was like bad, but he was putting some practical pressure, and then much later in the game, maybe around move 30, he made a move like queen b6, which was very, very unexpected.
This is a very complicated game, but yeah, queen b6 here.
Yeah, I mean, he just moved his queen all the way away from his king. My last move was rook e8, so it's clear I have some ideas to maybe play e3 and finally get some sort of direct play going. Instead of queen b6, I was kind of concerned about d5. C takes d5, and now very interesting move c5 maybe. If I don't take, then he has a passed pawn. So if I take, bishop takes f6, gf6, queen f6. Rook e7 looks the most logical, then rook b8, rook e8, rook takes, bishop takes, queen takes f5. It's equal material. You would think it's completely fine for black, but somehow his knight's activating. Yeah. I have some weaknesses, and there's some concrete lines, like let's say queen d6, knight g4, king g7. Looks like everything's secure, but he has queen h5. He hits h6, and my knight's pinned to the bishop. And if queen f4, then d5 hangs. It's very unfortunate. I couldn't find like a easy defense here. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do if he went for that. Instead, queen b6. We were both now low on time. And yeah, then I just went for the attack. And I'm not sure if we played the best moves, but in general, it seemed like the game completely shifted in my direction at this this point queen d8, and now, yeah, bishop e8. Maybe he kind of underestimated this. He doesn't really have any threats, and I'm threatening the bishop and the knight with the rook. And seems like, yeah, I'm just winning material by force here.
Yeah, this is collapsing, and of course after, yeah, this is not going to hold. The two pieces are too powerful. Oh, nice. It seems like you outplayed your opponent in that complication. Wasn't able to keep pace.
Yeah, I can show one line at the very end of the game,
Sure.
the last move that he made. So here, so I'm threatening the rook. I'm threatening knight e4 actually to block his queen from defending g2. So he has to hope for some miracle perpetual ideas. So rook e7 I thought was the best try, and then if knight e4, maybe he can sack. I mean, it probably doesn't work, rook g7, but he can try it. So instead, I thought the most precise was knight 6 or knight 3 to d5.
Knight 6 to d5.
Knight 6 to d5.
Yeah.
And now if rook g7, king g7, queen d7, king f6, queen checks somewhere, king f7, and then I block on e7 with the knight, and everything's defended. So I thought that was a clean win.
Wow.
Great. Back-to-back victories with the black pieces, the second one. How do you feel at this point, and who do you have tomorrow?
Yeah, so my previous game I was just white, so it wasn't back-to-back with black, but yeah. My next game, I think I'm white against Jeffery.
White against Jeffery. That's a big matchup.
That
Wish you
is
good luck, and we'll see you in the next rounds.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Speaking of Jeffery Xiong, let's take a look at how he is trying to survive here against Aram Hakobyan. It doesn't seem that he will be able to do so. It seems like the young player from Western, a highly motivated player, is going to take this one home. I like the move rook d4. You can imagine that this knight on e8, yes, it's holding to that pawn on d6, but it's not going to stay there forever, right? This knight on e8 will be expelled at some point. You can even try to exchange it sometimes with simply knight f6. You cannot possibly go into any kind of knight endgame. So I expect maybe rook e3, but this looks very bad for the Texas player. Let's go around the horn on the games that we have remaining. This one is a particularly interesting one. Aram Michaelian against Christopher Yu. Even material for the moment, and even after rook b3, actually, black has a threat. Actually, how did this happen? It doesn't feel that this went white's way. We left it over here. We'd like takes and rook d3. Takes. We liked all of this. I thought, yeah, rook a5, bishop d7. I don't know about the move rook e5. I don't know what this move does. I was thinking he was going to play g3, f4 and fix this weakness, and also start thinking about rook a6 type checkmates.
I think he just wants to transfer the rook on the other side and prepare to move c5 and say that you cannot go king to f4 because I have rook to e7. So that's a threat.
Right. Rook e7 is kind of a threat, but the problem is that if you go rook e7 now, I have king f6.
Right.
So that doesn't do much.
h4 was a key move,
It was a
stopping me
nice,
from going g3, f4.
very nice move. And he's activated the rook, and it just feels like this went from a 2-result game to a 3-result game. I don't like this king on h3.
No.
Does he have anything concrete?
It doesn't seem like it. No, it doesn't seem like
No,
it.
right?
Maybe just something along the lines of, well, maybe c6 at this point and just try to break even.
Yeah, but that's a tough psychological decision, right?
Yeah.
You could play c6 and just say, take my bishop, I'll take yours. I'm gonna not be in any real
draw. Yeah.
Right, but I mean, you're trying to play for a win, right? You've been ahead for so long. We're just gonna cheat him, use the engine for a little bit. Yeah, the engine says c6 by allowed is actually the best move.
c6, rook d5. It seems like the position actually has balance.
Just balance. It's actually nothing. Abhimanyu Mishra against Raj. Did he play the move f3?
He did.
Queen e5, f3, king g8. Okay, knight g4 first. Yeah, I mean, I could even take on h6 if I felt like it, but...
This one is not looking great for
queen
Harshit. It seems like probably Abhimanyu will score a victory.
I think he just resigns here, queen e7.
Oh, queen to e7, knight to h6.
Because this is a threat, picking up not one, but 2 pawns. Knight h6 is the bigger threat.
To g7.
Yeah, but that picks up 2 pawns right here.
Yeah.
You pick this guy, you pick this guy, maybe you pick this.
That's a lot of pawns.
That's too many pawns, and it's not like his king got
And
better.
a mating attack.
the poor guy, man. He has 0 out of 3.
Oh man. He's going to have a rough night tonight.
Yeah, Titus Stramavicius, I still think he's the one trying to hold on in this endgame against JJ Ali Marandi. But you would expect a player of his caliber to hold on to it, though. I don't expect White to lose this one.
Yes, with the knight on c1 and the rook potentially entering the fray, if you take with the bishop, then it does feel like you will have enough compensation for equality.
Yeah,
as White.
As White. And we're going to let Antipov and Dariush fight it out. We actually have no updates in that position after the move h4. Let's take a look at what the results of today have been so far. We have 3 of them ready for you in Group A.
In Group A, we have Hans Niemann, who finished quite quickly against Sam Sevian with a draw. Didn't manage to put a lot of pressure as White. Alex Lenderman survived against Ilya Nishnik. Kamil Dragun unfortunately succumbed under the pressure of the silent assassin, Ray Robson. And Mikhail Antipov against Dariush Zvierch and Jeffery Xiong against Aram Hakobyan, still pending.
Absolutely. And in Group B, we have the following results. Chris Repka moves on to 3 out of 3. Absolutely amazing tournament for him so far, defeating Sam Khanin. Elsha Maria Debari and Robert Honagaski split the point. And we still have 3 remaining games, but I think the clearest result from these will be absolutely Abhimanyu Mishra defeating Raja Hershey. We expect that resignation at any moment.
Well, that was a fun round, Alejandro.
Absolutely.
And join us tomorrow. We will be back at the same time, 3:30 p.m. Central Time. That's when the show starts. The games, however, start at 1 p.m. Central Time. So plan your schedules accordingly, and we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Don't miss us. And remember, the game started at 1, but we'll be here at 3:30 just to recap what has happened. See you tomorrow.
See you guys.
This has been a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club. Any reproduction or distribution of this content without the express written consent of the St. Louis Chess Club is prohibited.